Welcome to Bada Boom. I'm Chris. On this episode, we have on Peter J. Tomasi and Francis Manapul, two of Ghost Machine's founding creators and the team behind the Rocketfellers. Part of Ghost Machine's Family Oddyseys line, the Rocketfellers follows a family from the future who escaped to the past as a part of a witness protection program. Tomasi and Manapul talk about year one of Ghost Machine, the creative freedom of not only being collaborators but owners, and how Family Oddyseys looks to redefine what all ages books means to the comic industry. We also chat about the upcoming Hornsby and Halo, which sees Tomasi working with Peter Snejbjerg, and how Tomasi and Manapul's work on characters like Batman and the Flash led to this moment. Rockefellers hits comic stores on November 20th, and Hornsby and Halo drops on November 27th. Listen in and bada boom. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Great.
How you guys doing?
We're
Doing
great.
well.
We're excited to chat with you guys. Just because obviously last year I was able to attend the announcement panel for Ghost Machine,
Um,
and two of the stories that I'm most excited about, Rockefellers and Hornsby and Halo, are some of the things that I'm really excited for the rest of the year. So I'm glad to have you guys on and to talk about the Rockefellers. So tell us about like sort of the inception of the idea. Conceptually, it's really high concept, but I think people are going to be surprised at the heart of the story. So, where did you guys come up with the story?
um, Came up really from a lot of the first one was like, excuse me. Whole concept came up really in a long late night conversation with Francis once we were locked into, joining up on Ghost Machine and we had a slight tiny one sentence premise and then we suddenly just kind of blew it up further and further over the course of a couple hours until we just came up with the family from the future escaping to the present day in a special witness protection program, on the run from a big baddie who's looking to get them and stop them from saving a lot of people.
Awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, literally. I think I had just come back from LA after a meeting with Jeff. And then I had called Pete. And yeah, I think just hours and hours of talking and seeing what we could do with it. It's funny, there were different iterations of it that we had to like pull back, like, oh, we're kind of moving a little, this is a different kind of family book now.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
But the core of it really was to try to tell this story about this family who in the future is living this like really disconnected lives from each other, right? And then yet here they are in our century, which we're already kind of living in that way, but yet to them this is all super archaic, right? So to them, living here is like roughing it. So it gives them the opportunity to get to know each other on a deeper level while at the same time trying to escape this cyborg that's coming after them from the future.
And for you, Francis, what's that like, especially creating sort of a new world where you have something like you have a future and then you also have a present and sort of striking that balance. I think during the panel at New York Comic Con, they shared some preview pages that I was really excited about. So what's it like sort of balancing that? And like what I really like about sort of what's been shown is sort of has like almost like a retro feel, like what we thought like the future would look like in the past, like in terms of like the costumes and stuff like that. So what's it been like sort of building that world?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun, right? Like working with Peter is pretty amazing. Like we've circled each other for a while, so this is the first time we're really getting into this deep collaborative mode. We've known each other for a few years, and a lot of it is really just being friends. Having been there through the trenches in the bad office, right? So this was a great opportunity for us to create something new, something that is reflective of a lot of the things that we value, right? And a lot of the things that we're curious about, questions that we wanted to ask about, about family and the future and things like that, right? So, when it comes to designing the stuff, I remember Pete and I had these long conversations about using uh, these old illustrations from geez, I'm blanking. I know I was looking at some JC Leyendecker stuff, and then we were looking at some Norman Rockwell stuff as a jumping off point for what that familial look is that everybody is accustomed to, you know. So we wanted to, even though we're creating something new, we wanted the characters and the vibe of the book to feel warm and familiar, right? You know, as if you've known these characters for a long time and that you didn't just meet them yesterday, right? So that was kind of a lot of the look that we were going for. And at the same time, you know, I started doing this research on this concept called solar punk, you know, where the opposite of the dystopian future, where things are a lot more integrated with nature when it comes to technology, right? So, you know, right now we've only seen the tip of the iceberg with what the future looks like, because like we literally only just show you icebergs
Mhm.
in the first issue. But as we expand, it's going to be fun revealing a little bit more what the future world is like. So.
Yeah, and what's it been kind of like the Rockefellers or Rocketeers story is it's very much a family story, and you have like aspects of like time travel and the future, and there's like all these sci-fi elements. And I think it's very easy for people to kind of get lost in those elements because that's what kind of draws some people to the story. But for me, everything I've read, it's just a heartwarming family story. So what's it been like trying to make sure people don't get caught up in those elements and they focus on this is a family story?
Oh yeah, I mean you hit it right on the head there. I mean that's really what keeps people reading, in the, checking out the books on a constant basis. I mean, it's, there's high concept and there's you know, they're coming from the future, but it's really just about emotions and heart and watching characters, literally start from a point of an arc and then watching them over the course of, at least 2 or 3 years. We've even been thinking about, story stuff that we already have locked in, just following them through with some really heavy, emotional, fun, exciting adventure arcs. But all of it, every single part of this is really just from a family, heartfelt point of view. And because if you don't care, I'm one of those kind of guys too. I love science fiction, but when science fiction is a little too cold and a little too when it doesn't have a humanistic touch, it kind of I may look at it, the spectacle of it, and love the visuals and compositions of, let's say, a sci-fi film or whatever. But if I'm not emotionally invested, it's a film that doesn't stay with me for long, So we want these books to really, get a hook in people because of the emotion and the characters first, and then the story and the concepts will come up right behind it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think we at Ghost Machine really excel at is really putting a lot of humanity into the characters, right? You know, even like when Pete's been up to Toronto a few times, and even though there's this scale of what we're trying to do, of trying to create these fantastic stories, at the end of the day, you know, when he's spending a week here or he's, you know, living in my house for like a week or so, it kind of comes down to our relationship, right? And how Pete and I get along, right? So even though we're talking about the work, we end up connecting as people, and it's kind of the same thing with stories, right? Even though this science fiction world really draws you in, it really comes down to how well we're able to get across the humanity of these characters to the readers, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with how collaborative that we are when it comes to not just the work but also the personal aspect of our relationship, because I think that shows through the work, right? Is constantly, it's unavoidable to have a sense of connection with these characters when the aspect of the creation has so much humanity into it as well, you know.
Yeah, and what I
Yeah.
really think Ghost Machine really excels at, Pete, you talked about sort of having 3 years of story sort of plotted out and discussed. What's that like, sort of going from that, that big two where you guys were at DC, where sometimes things will move around, priorities change, but now you have that ability to sort of plot things out, and also give the reader something to really invest in. I think myself, what I've really loved about all the books there is that, like, I know like, hey, like I'm gonna get Redcoat every month. I'm gonna get Geiger, every month, and it's still gonna be that high quality. And I'm really following these
Right.
characters, and I get that nuance. And like me, even, you can see behind me, I love my Marvel, my DC, but there are times where like I get into a book and I'm like, well, that creative team changed after 5 issues, or like, hey, like this big event is happening, so there's tie-ins. So what's it like to sort of be in a position where you can really focus in on those characters?
Well, that's a great, that's a good angle on things.
Mm,
It's a real joy not to be. I mean, I can't even honestly, I lose count of how many times my stories were short-circuited because of an event or a small little thing, mini thing that had to suddenly tie in the middle of a story. I mean, it's not a lot of fun, and
mm,
because you'll work really hard at building story and character stuff, and suddenly it's the rug is pulled out and you're kind of left like, okay, now I gotta you know try to manufacture some
mm,
story elements from some other story elements. And luckily, I feel like I'm good at bending with that after
mm,
all these years. It's a big two. So now to know that we don't have to do that is great. To know that, our stories will be told exactly the way we want them. There'll be no interruptions, or there'll be no interconnectedness unless and until when and if we want there to be.
mm,
So it's nice not to have a sort of a brother eye telling you, hey, you gotta do this now. Oh, you're on chapter 3. Well, don't worry about it. You're gonna have to come back in 3 or 4 months and continue the story. It's like it's tough. It's tough to do,
mm.
but it's a joy now in Ghost Machine to have the reins and the control, as the creative teams all do, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I remember what's great about it is the only minds that can change the story is ours. I remember when in New York, Pete and I were just having either a very late lunch or a very early dinner, depending on how you look at it. I think during the course of that meal, we changed our mind a few times about where we were going because we were looking at things on such a big level. The things that we're discussing really had massive implications for what would end up happening in issue 50 or issue 100, whenever it is that we get there, right? Regardless, it's kind of nice to know that the path that we're setting forth now is only going to be changed if we decide to change it, because sometimes stories evolve, right? And it needs to change, right? And it's kind of nice to not have that, oh, okay, great, I got this 1 year plan, and then next thing you know, oh, actually, I can't actually do it. That's one of the things that's how Pete and I hit it off when we were
Mm.
at DC. They're like, hey, isn't this frustrating? Yeah, it sure is.
Nothing brings people together about like complaining at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's we all
Yeah.
have water coolers, right?
Yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, and it's awesome. I think like some of the best stuff you both have been involved in. I think sort of having that runway allows you to have those payoffs. Like some of those big moments that you have in stories don't feel so sudden when you're not coming off an event or like it's not disjointed. I can think of some of my favorite comic moments, and it's like, hey, like if I didn't get those 50 issues before of building towards that, like it wouldn't hit the same. So I'm really glad to sort of like have that with Ghost Machine where it's like that investment, not just in the stories, but I think the audience. And I think the audience has really appreciated that. And I think, and I hope that people will really dive into the Rockefellers that same way.
Yeah,
yeah, no,
we
I mean
must.
you you hit the nail on the head. It's
Mm,
it's to have a payoff, you really got to earn it, right? We can't just skip it. And I think there are times when stories need to be truncated, when even, as a writer, that you didn't earn that payoff, but it has to because it needs to make room for this next thing that's being ushered in. And
mm,
it's definitely a very refreshing thing to have the luxury that we have
yeah.
to create that, especially when it's a family book. It's it's probably more about the earning than the payoff when it comes to building relationships, right?
Yeah.
So
A good way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah, and I think, it's one of the things we're trying to also get across, Francis and I, is to make sure, retailers and now, your podcast, readers will understand that this is not, when they go to the stands or they go to the store to pick it up, it's not a juvenile. These are not juvenile comics. These aren't like Scooby-Doo comics or, this is a PG-13 kind of vibe, but it's everybody can pick it up. It's got tons of action, heart, etc. Um, and tragedy and hope and joy and sadness. It's got all these elements that make up a great story. So it's not, we want to make sure that when you see Family Odysseys, it's about families going through odysseys, going through their own adventures and their own tumultuous times. It's not about, hey kids, let's, it's not that kind of book or any of the
Yeah, I mean,
books.
because that's the thing, right? Like, we've been in this industry long enough that as soon as we say all ages, everyone's going to assume that it's 10 and under,
Yeah.
right? So we're taking a very different approach to that, and that we look at these books as gateway books to readers of our line of books, and also to comics in general, right? Our goal is to produce comics that if you were the retailer and somebody walks in who's like 60 years old and has never read a comic, you could grab this with confidence and say that this 60-year-old person is going to enjoy it. But at the same time, know that you can grab this and give it to somebody who's 8 and be confident that they'll be okay reading that as well. Right. So it's very much a multi generational approach that we're taking with these stories. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that because the characters, it's an ensemble cast, right? So there's always somebody to relate to. And look, I'm pretty sure that whether you're 8 or 80, you enjoy science fiction, right? You're going to enjoy like robots and dogs and motorcycles and explosions. So, that's kind of the goal. So it's a very broad audience within this niche that we're telling this family future story.
Yeah, I've got to say, I am excited to get multiple issues of like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I'm getting my grandma into comics right now. She just moved in with my parents and she just sits around and reads all day. And I just got her a comic book the other day, and now she's like, "This is a good comic book." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a historically accurate one." But now with Rocketeers, it's like there's someone in this family that's someone in my family. And so I think this is one of those stories where like even like my siblings, my sisters aren't into comics. They're able to say, "Oh, this was a good book. I want to keep reading this one." So, and the fact that you guys have such a long, like you guys said, you've got issues planned out to like 50. The payoff is going to be really great, not just for, me who loves comics, but my family members that see themselves as the characters in the comics as well. When they start seeing that payoff coming, they're going to really enjoy that payoff, not only just because of how good the story is, but I think the thing that like really will tie this together really well for families that like comics is they get to see themselves as an individual have their own payoff for the character that they see themselves in the most. And I think that's like one of the most exciting things that I'm excited to share with my family, and of course everyone else that has a family that is in the comics as well too, is you'll see a payoff hopefully for the character they see in themselves as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's a
every
go ahead.
every few issues there'll be payoffs. So you won't have to wait 50 issues, but every there'll be arcs and there'll be payoffs, and it's really about making sure that like in a way, families absolutely families can see themselves mirrored back to themselves. But it's for individual readers because at one point or at a time, right, we've all been a part of a family in some way, shape, or form. So you don't have to necessarily be in a big family right now or even a small family. Even as an individual, you're still going to be able to connect to the characters and to the stories that are told just simply because of the emotional context
Yeah,
that's involved.
yeah, I mean, we even have characters who are outside of the family. It's
Right.
really, I would say the best thing about this is that we have an opportunity to build from the ground up, right? And I think for readers, it's a very great ground level entry point, right? That as you said, perhaps like you and your grandparents are reading it throughout the years and kind of are keeping tabs on the characters, right? So if we do our jobs right, these are characters that you're going to want to check in on once a month at least to see what they're up to, right? So that's the goal.
Yeah, and I think you guys really are on that right path, and it sort of speaks to the approach, and I think that's really important because I think sometimes yes, like the industry thinks all ages for kids, but the reality is like sometimes those stories can have a little bit like it doesn't mean you have to talk down to people or sort of
Yeah.
like
Right.
me. I think audiences, especially these days, are really smart. Like, I take my son all the time to books Kinokuya, which is like a Japanese bookstore that has manga. You go in there, like a lot of the kids are picking up like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, like these really like
Yeah.
dense and sort of like almost like really violent. So I think people can sort of really take it. It's just really about the approach of the characters, and I think. Like for example, my little sister, her favorite movie when she was a kid was the James Gunn written Scooby-Doo, which was fine when she was a kid, but now as an adult, she gets to appreciate some of the more adult jokes in it
Sure.
and stuff like that. When I was, watching it with her, I could watch it with her. So I think, that speaks
That's the best
to,
stuff. Right.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Rockefellers, Hornsby and Halo. Troy and I, when we read the preview of Hornsby and Halo in the Ghost Machine one shot, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, I don't know, maybe this is gonna be like that was like the story I was most surprised with because it kind of had like a New Gods feel. It wasn't again speaking down to me or anything like that, and I felt like although I enjoyed it, I could probably read it to my 5-year-old, So I think the approach
Right.
really works, and I think that's not just how you have that short-term success now with readers, but also make stories that are evergreen and everlasting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then sort of switching gears a little bit to Hornsby and Halo, what's that been like? I know that was sort of the story that was added sort of the latest when things were announced last year. And it was interesting to see it in that one shot. So Pete, what was it like sort of creating that story?
Um, it was an idea I had in one of my notebooks for a long time. And when we were figuring out the first salvo, the first line of books, um, it popped into my head because I thought in terms of a family Odyssey book, it would fit in a really good way. And yeah, it just heaven and hell, angel and demon, and here on earth, turning 13 years old, and how they deal with learning about their true identities and how they deal with all the insanity of being a 13-year-old here on planet Earth at the same time. And again, you know, families, their families, their parents, and it's emotional, and the families are very distinctly drawn. And Peter Snejbjerg is killing it on the art, and John Kayla's on the colors, and Rob Lee on the lettering. It's a really I think of all the books, I think that will probably be the most surprising to people. I think when they pick that up, I think they are gonna have some preconceived notions, and then when they pick it up, it's gonna completely flip their notions, upside down. So yeah, really proud of it. I think it's got a lot of, it's got that supernatural vibe to it, but it's also got just a lot of heart and everyday, angst, and what it's like to try to fit in, and that kind of stuff. So it's great. It's really proud of the book. Both books. They're both
Mm.
I think they're really just great, like Francis said earlier, great gateway books to get involved with. It's great for new readers. It's great for older readers who are tired of superhero tropes. And it's good for even people now just wanting just a little bit of a shakeup from their usual, DC or Marvel fix. And yeah, I think Ghost Machine is offering a real nice wide genre of books that are just firing on all cylinders right now, so from all the creators. So I'm really happy to be part of it.
And what's it been like to see those ideas evolve, working with Francis and Peter Snejbjerg to sort of create these ideas? Like, I think what's really cool about comics is seeing sort of the collaboration between writer and artist and see sort of how those meld and also how those ideas evolve. So what's it been like sort of collaborating? And obviously Hornsby and Halo is an idea you've had for a really long time, but what's it been like to sort of see it come to life and that collaboration?
No, it's been great. I mean, when I was in Toronto with Francis, and we were writing it, it's like Francis, we're writing, and Francis at the board, and he's drawing literally stuff that we're saying two and a half seconds later and bringing it to life, and it's awesome. It's a great anytime. That's one of the best things about comics is it's such a tangible, immediate medium if you're a creator, because having been on the Hollywood side of things for many years, where you write and you throw your scripts into a black hole that never get produced, you never see it. Comics, you if you're lucky and you get into a career that I've been lucky to get into and get involved with collaborators like Francis and Peter, you create something together, and then suddenly, a couple months later, there it is visualized, and then a couple months after that, it's in a store, and then who knows, a month or two after that, you've got fans coming up to you and enjoying the work. I mean, it's there's no other business like it. It's great.
Yeah, and for you, Francis, what's that been like, that collaboration? I think something I love about you as an artist is what you bring as a writer. I think last year when I got my Flash omnibus signed by you, you're able to sort of point out sort of all these story elements in every panel, and I really like love that, and I could see sort of the love and attention you bring to it. So, what's it been like, sort of collaborating with Peter to create the world of Rockefellers?
Oh, it's been so rewarding,
Mhm.
like when Pete's here, like dude, the entire process, it was strange, right? Because you know I, sometimes I need to shut up, and and I need to just take in what Peter's saying,
Mhm.
right? You know, and it's very interesting, right? Because once you're in the nitty-gritty of it, it's hard not to. It feels like we're forming a clay together, right? It's hard not to like pinch over here, push over there, and press over here. And every now and then, what's been really cool is when I take a step back, I'm kind of like, oh man, I would read the heck out of Peter's story for years, right? And to me, it's very strange to be creating a story with him, right? Because sometimes I feel like maybe I should just exit the room and just let you do your thing, and I'll come back when you're done. Yeah. But I think that's kind of what's been really fun about this process is that so much of who we are as people is infused into these stories, right? It's the same thing as like when we were talking about the Flash stuff. To me, I look at, I'll be honest, I don't remember the plots of a lot of what I wrote on the Flash, but I can tell you what was happening in my life during each arc, right? Because
Mhm.
each arc reflected in some way the feelings that I had in that moment, right? And what's kind of fun about this book is that collectively the experience that we have both as creators as fathers is really affecting the book in such a profound way that like dude, like when Pete was here, I there were a few times where we freaking started crying in front of each other as we're
Yeah.
talking about the story, and I've never had that happen before, because it's such a you know it's hard not to get invested in these characters, and I remember, we're talking about the story element, I just started crying, and Pete's just like, yeah, yeah, man, see, it's
Mhm.
it's hard, it's hard not to get invested with these characters, right? Like if we do them right, we treat them like real people, we have a fully fleshed out idea and stories of who these characters are, it's going to affect you, And I think that's been one of the greatest takeaways from this process is how much each day is a massive learning experience, and I constantly every now and then because once when you're working, it's hard to like step back, right? So every now and then I do need to take a step back and say, like, wow, I'm working with Pete. Wow, I can't believe we're telling this kind of story. So it's I need to do that more often because most of the time I'm just like, man, this is a real grind.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
No,
that's
everybody's in the trenches together.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think sort of like what you guys bring as on an individual level will definitely elevate these stories. And I think sometimes like as a parent you can kind of get in your feelings a little bit, especially when you see or you're telling a story that really resonates with you. Like a couple months ago I watched Godzilla -1 and I was in tears. And I was like, before I was a dad, I probably wouldn't have cried and been like, I would have been like, oh, this is a pretty good Godzilla movie. But because I'm a parent, there's just like the story and all that. I was like, it hit me at the right time. There was something in my mind that just like, all right, I gotta let this tear out. There's no one around. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I could cry.
Yeah, it recontextualizes things, right?
Yeah.
It's you're taking who you are as an audience and inserting yourself into the story. And that's the best thing that we can do, is for you to see yourself in the stories and have that kind of emotional reaction, right? I think that's really our goal, right? Is this ability to transfer the emotions that we are feeling as we're writing this and extract it out of you.
Right. I mean, you think about all the comics. I mean, I've read a lot of comics, and all the ones I remember, it's never about, wow, that was a great plot. It's always about those small human moments that the characters went through that, hit you the hardest and stay with you the longest. And, the people who come up to conventions are never saying, and that scene where they hit the robots in the head with that Superman swarm, that big crane. It's never that. It's like, boy, that scene where him and Jonathan were just talking in that moment, or when they're at the kitchen table, or they're at the fair, or they were, they went on a trip down to Washington D.C. and there was no superheroics whatsoever. I mean, that's the stuff that they remember, and that's the stuff that stays with them. So, and it stays with me when I was reading books, be it Spider-Man or Captain America, stuff like that. It's all these small human moments, especially in Spidey growing up. You remember a lot of, I can still quote stuff that I haven't read in 40 years. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like look, I don't remember some of the plots that Pete wrote on Batman and Robin, but I remember the scene when they were under the sewers or something and they folded this newspaper boat and they set it off, and I just remember losing it. I don't remember the context. I just remember how it made me feel at that time, and I still bring that with me. I don't remember exactly what happened, but that's the thing. That's how you kind of I guess endear yourself to people, right? Is that it taps into an emotion that they felt having read the book. And I think that's why people reread some of their favorite books every year. It's almost like a refresher of recalling how you felt, right? And a lot of it is reaffirming that those feelings were valid, and at the same time remembering exactly what the hell was happening in the story because you don't remember the plot, you know. So.
And as you said earlier too, about how the emotions, what you read and 5 years ago is gonna read a little bit different now that maybe especially a book like Batman and Robin, especially a book like the Rockefellers. If you're if you don't have a family and then you read it when you have a family, it's those little moments that stay with you. It's like the one that Francis is talking about. That was Batman. He was trying to put aside his parents' deaths, and he literally had the program from 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 the Zorro movie that night. So he sends it out into the sewer to sort of send away his, as a last parting thing of his parents. And then literally 50 issues later, he's fighting in this big scene, and then like he's having this dream, and he's literally in that paper program, but it's now the size of a big boat. And it's, did I plan that? No, I did not. But organically, it just kind of all of a sudden, because what I like to do is, especially when you're on a long run, like I was on Batman and Robin and other books, what the best thing to do as a writer is like which I'm looking forward to with Francis when we're 50 issues in, and we can look back on some of the early issues, and we can cherry pick moments that will have we won't even realize then will have some amazing resonance that we didn't even think of at the moment, and that will tie it all in together in really great visuals and heartfelt stuff that you don't see coming as a reader unless you've like been with that journey, and you'll be like, holy crap, they paid off something from 5 years ago, a small moment that it pays off emotionally. It's the best. It's so cool to do stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and speaking about starting the journey, is there any teases you guys can give us from Rocketfellers and Hornsby? We were able to get the ash can at New York Comic Con, so I feel like we got a really good hint of what's going to come. But is there anything you can tell our listeners that weren't able to pick that up or pick up the Ghost Machine #1 from, gosh, was that last year already?
It was January, so it's almost like
it's January. Okay, it feels like last year.
I don't know. I think maybe everything we've said so far kind of ties it all in terms of the kind of books they should expect from it, from Francis and me and Peter Snejbjerg on Hornsby and Halo. Yeah, it's just I wish they were out and then we could talk a little bit more about some of this, but the fact that they're not even out yet kind of leaves us a little bit on the edge of not being able to tell too much about stuff. But just that it's the concepts of what they are and the characters who they are and the journey they're going to take, and it's a hell of a good time to be a Ghost Machine reader, because like we were saying, you're in on the ground floor of all these characters, and it's going to be a lot of joy bringing it to readers.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's kind of been really fun about the book is when as it dawned on me as Peter was talking about making emotionally memorable scenes, I'm thinking about my run on the Flash. I'm like, yeah, I remember how some of those things made me feel. But most of the time, the things that people remembered are those cool speed tricks that we created, right? So I think that's kind of what's been neat about the Rockefellers is that, we've been able to really infuse a lot of action. If you guys have had a chance to preview the first issue, you'll see that it's a very action-packed book. And then it's balanced out with a lot of some of the softer moments. But I think, me personally, I love all the characters, and sometimes I can't decide who my favorite is. But every time I get to draw the villain, I keep thinking this character is gonna be. I think she's gonna be a real breakout in the book. I think we've created such a cool villain that. Oh my God! I don't know. I think she's gonna be. I think she's gonna be really cool, and I think she's gonna grow to become a real fan favorite. So.
Listen, I can't wait for them to be a fan favorite, because then I could sell my ash can that has your remark on it, and then I could send my kid to college. So I am hoping that they're a great character as well.
Always thinking, I like that.
Yeah. Let's always be selling, right?
Yeah,
So. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Like I said, it's great to have both of you on and also be in this position with Ghost Machine. I've loved the books, and it's been great to follow it, and I can't wait for in a year when hopefully we could talk about some of the setups and payoffs that you guys have done with both books. So thank you so much for coming on, and with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Boom.
Bada boom.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for listening to the Bob Boom Podcast. Keep the conversation going with Chris and I on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can find us on all these places at Bada Boom Podcast. Get into the comments on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you like about the show or what you'd like to hear from us in the future. Until next time, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.